Welcome to the Dynamics of Everyday Life, where we demystify some tricky concepts and get to know ourselves a little bit better. Welcome back to the Dynamics of Everyday Life. Today, we're venturing back into the world of work and how we feel about work. Now, this might backfire as we're in January, where typically we don't want to be thinking about work. We want to be dreaming of our holidays. But bear with me on this one. We spend so much of our time at work that when you think about it, it makes sense for us to try and make it the best we possibly can. Otherwise, it's an awful lot of hours we're wasting away. We can have some of the best times of our lives at work, and also some of the worst. We can meet some incredible people through work. I'm still friends with people I worked with 20 years ago, and I don't just mean Facebook friends either, proper friends that I'll ring up when I need some advice, or they will ring me if they want to catch up and have a chat. And we can also meet some people we're never going to want to see again. But as the saying goes, that's all part of life's rich tapestry. Therefore, it's important for us to try and understand the dynamics that are at play at work. And even though we might be working remotely, there are still going to be dynamics impacting what we do, who we are, how we feel, and how we show up. Reed Hastings is the CEO of Netflix. Now, I'd love to get him on the show. Imagine that as a coup. Not yet, but who knows? And he's famously said that Netflix are not a family. They're like a high-performing professional sports team where everyone plays their part. You need to perform to the best of your ability, but if you have one bad match, you're not going to get dropped. And this has made me think about what's going on in work scenarios when people say that they're like one big happy family. First off, I'm not really sure that I believe them. The moment someone says, we're just like a big happy family, I wonder who they're trying to convince. Not all families are living on Waltons Mountain, and we've all been in work situations where we could quite happily shove a few people off a mountain given half a chance. So let's take the happy out of the equation. Where there are similarities, and I think this can be true of high-performing sports teams as well, is that there are a lot of complicated and complex human beings in a structure. And maybe they chose to be in this structure, and maybe they didn't. So have a think about people marrying into a family at this point. You might be choosing your spouse, but you're definitely not choosing your in-laws. And there can be all kinds of things like jostling for position, needing to be noticed. There are feelings of security and insecurity, and we've got different relationships between the various family and team members. Communication isn't necessarily the easiest things for us as human. So, for example, I might say one thing, but what you actually hear is completely different. And that's because of your background, your education, your life experiences, etc. And we can have some people in organisations who are fabulous at communication, but it kind of falls flat because the people that they're communicating with aren't fabulous at interpreting those communications as they're meant. So we can see how things are starting to get messy and confused. Cue the bust up at the work's Christmas party or round the family Christmas dinner table. What we all share in being part of a family and being at work is that we're part of several different systems. And even if you work for yourself, you're still part of a system. You might have more autonomy in building that system, but it's still there. If you think about the system of bidding for work, for putting out invoices, for delivering the work, for negotiating with clients, there is still a system there. And we function best in a system where we know our roles and responsibilities. So have a think about the jobs that you've been happiest in. I bet some of that is because you've known exactly what it is you should be doing, who does what, and how you fit in. It's the same in a family structure. My mother-in-law has a fantastic saying in that two women can't share a kitchen. And I really love this as saying there's an awful lot of truth in it. It's much better if we know who's cooking the dinner and who's hoovering the living room. I don't mind the cooking, but we would have to be knee-deep in grot for me to get the hoover out. I really, really hate it. However, fortunately, in our house, that's not my agreed area of housework. And if we don't know where we are or what we're doing, well, that's when our old friend anxiety comes out to play. We start to get a bit anxious because we're not feeling safe. And at work, this can be particularly unpleasant and unnerving. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel as if someone is after your job? It's really no fun. And from a psychodynamic perspective, this can be similar to a bit of sibling rivalry in a family dynamic. And what we're doing here is we're competing to get the attention and favour of our parents. We may even unconsciously choose work situations that remind us of our family of origin dynamics because these make us feel comfortable. Ironically, we might then end up feeling anxious in these situations because we don't feel safe. There's a huge paradox here. We've chosen a work environment because it's got the draw of the familiar, and yet we end up feeling unsafe. And so what our conscious minds do is they tell us that we don't want to be in it. We get infuriated with Barry from accounts and his behaviour because we feel as if he's behaving like our older brother, who thinks he knows everything and bosses us around. Yet, is this actually the case? Is Barry behaving this way? Or is it something we're projecting onto him to help us feel safe by creating a world and an environment that we know? There's also potential for some transference to occur at work. So a quick recap on transference for everyone who doesn't live and breathe these topics in the way that I do. Transference is where we repeat the dynamics of our earliest relationships in situations in the here and now. So to give you an example, for those of you who haven't heard this before, when I went for my latest round of accreditations for coaching to be an MCC, I had to get some mentoring, and I chose an MCC that I knew, Giuseppe. I really admired his work. And I started to notice that when it came to my sessions with Giuseppe, I would get all my pieces of paper out, I'd get my notes, I'd get things that I'd highlighted, I'd get the questions. I mean, honestly, if I could have got an apple for my teacher, I really would have done. And I caught a glance of myself, a reflection of myself in the window, and I thought, what am I doing? Who have I turned into? And then I realised what I was trying to do was I was trying to impress Giuseppe as I would have tried to impress my father. So trying to get my parents' attention in a positive way by my achievements. And in this way, you can see we can have positive and negative transferences. So they can help us. So in my example with Giuseppe, this really helped me. I got my accreditation first go, which doesn't happen for everyone. And it was a really positive experience for me. There are some cases of negative transference that can get in the way if you start repeating a relationship that wasn't helpful for you, that you're not your best in. These can stop you being and achieving what the person that you want to be. So whilst your work situation isn't your family, let's face it, in an organisation, anyone can be made redundant or get fired at any time. You can end up feeling as if your boss is your parent. I remember when I was managing mental health services in another lifetime, I had asked a team member to do something, and it was quite a reasonable thing that I'd asked, and she refused. And my assistant said to me at the time, "I can't believe that. You don't say no to your mum." And after the moment of shock had subsided, I had to point out to him that I wasn't actually the parent of the team. This is why issues at work can cause us so much psychological pain. We spend time there, we put effort into relationship building, and we deliver as requested. Maybe we want to go to work to avoid challenges that we have at home. And if things go wrong at work, or if we repeat scenarios at home from our work lives, we can end up feeling overwhelmed. And perhaps we're expecting support that doesn't come, because our co-workers are dealing with their own stuff. It's really easy to forget that everybody has their own stuff that they're carrying. Or our co-workers leave unexpectedly and join another team or workplace. So, no, Netflix isn't a family. However, I'd be extremely surprised if the team members there didn't have some kind of responses that reminded them of their own family dynamics. I haven't gone into family businesses in this episode, and I did consider it, but I think there's so many added layers here that it's probably one for another time. I'm not sure I could do it justice in this episode. It really does merit an episode all on its own. Just in case you think I've forgotten something. My invitation to you this week is for you to consider where you feel you fit in at work. Does your workplace feel like a family unit? And if it does, how do you feel about that? Is it functioning? Or is it dysfunctional? Do you feel like you've been assigned a role? And if so, have you taken this up without question? Does it feel like it suits you and your personality? Or do you feel like a square peg in a round hole? Are people responding to you in a way that doesn't sit well with who you think you are? Or maybe you feel that people don't see you for who you are. Maybe you're going to work to get all of your needs met and are disappointed because they can't possibly be met all in one place, no matter what Disney tries to tell us. Remember a previous episode where I talk about don't go to the DIY shop for milk. If you go to the wrong place to get your needs met, you're going to end up being disappointed. And, as always, give yourself some grace. Realising that we might be repeating patterns in our work situations can be incredibly frustrating, especially if we feel that we've worked really hard to have a different identity at work. Looking at ourselves at this level can be challenging and unnerving as we develop our awareness, so I'd always encourage that you do this at your own speed. If you feel you need some extra help around this, then I've put together a PDF resource sheet and you can find the link for this in the show notes. If you'd like to have a chat with me about psychodynamics or whether I'm the right coach, supervisor or mentor for you, then click on the link that's also in the show notes. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dynamics of Everyday Life. Please hit the follow button for future episodes and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Instagram at the Dynamics of Everyday Life or find me on LinkedIn at Julia Rogers. I'd love to hear from you and hear your thoughts on dynamics. The Dynamics of Everyday Life is brought to you by Coaching 42 and the fabulous team at the Podcast Boutique.